it's very similar to the my last month's interviews I did with Wayne Bush about NDEs. The NDers, you get the same feeling that very few of them among the thousands of NDE testimonies have seen through the veil and the filter that was put in front of them, with the false light tunnel and the screen memories of their parents or loved ones, and also beings, false guys, Jesus, Mohammed, Buddha, and Vishnu, and all types of archetypes. And sometimes they observed, they even saw some type of technology on the other side that was bugging. Was going around in circle like a wheel, and the thing would show Jesus at 1 second and flap to another divinity, and it's just adjusts to your cultural and religious background, or sometimes not even. But the thing is that comes back quite often is that on the other side you have access. Once you have gone through the veil and you have access to all universal knowledge, and all your memories are erased on your way back. So basically, once we come to this world, our memories have been erased. So we've lost all memories. Isn't that the evidence that we're in a farm, basically a gigantic farm? And when you look at David Paulides' work, on the missing persons in national around the world, and I was in an interview with Juan in Spain yesterday. And we also talked about the amount of people that were disappearing every year in Spain, in France, same thing, in Belgium. Thousands of people disappeared just from the map, It's just, this is just another evidence that we're in a farm. So that's why the experiencers are very important, because they have conscious memory. Yeah. Most of them, they're meeting with the shepherds that are invisible, basically. And
this brings me to when I died when I was 13, and the experience I had, which is interesting. You're talking about that, because I had drowned when I was 13, and this is how I learned about the false light, and the mechanization of death, that it's actually a machine, the way it all works. Because when I died, there was no light. There was no anything. It was pitch pure. I mean, it was like a void of darkness. But it was not terrifying. I remember as I was dying and everything went dark, I was asking myself, well, where's the light? Where's the light? Everybody's talking about the light. And I thought something was wrong with me because there was no light. And in fact, when I calmed down, and at this point I had drowned, I had just calmed down, and it was the most beautiful experience I ever had. When I had the void, I call it the deep, I felt like everything outside the deep was what was manipulated and untrue, and nothing could penetrate the deep. So you could just go into the deep and go anywhere. It was the most perfect stillness experience ever, but it baffled me because the programming was that you would wait for people you knew, you would wait for the light, everything would happen, and you'd be taken care of. So having that experience at 13 was what showed me the reality versus the trap, and the machines that they use with our, quote, fire bodies, which they harness. They harness that to create the technology that they use against us to trap us when people die, including the whole game of reincarnation. And, they keep you occupied with that so that it's a hamster wheel. But it's a technology that they're doing this.
Yeah, they want us to come back, basically, to reinvest the farm and keep feeding whatever their appetite is, which we know about. You ladies have dealt with what they feed off of.
We get to run into those all the time with the reports I get with the love bite or the dark side of Cupid, where someone who was in a relationship with someone else who displayed these energy vampire characteristics, but their very dramatic is because the other person is actually hosted by a non-human entity or something working through them that literally, vampires their energy and throws chaos and all this dark energy into their lives. And they have sociopathic and narcissistic types of behaviors, but there is a dynamic that you can identify. But oftentimes this is sometimes mistaken for a twin flame because the sexual chemistry and the connection on the soul level and even the telepathic and the synchronicities is very profound with some of these beings that are working through humans as hosts to basically create these relationships that is a major vampire operation. So it's learning how to work with that and identify, what's a true twin flame versus was one of these manipulated things, because it can hurt people very badly. It could kill them. And so it's dangerous, but you can identify it once you know what it feels like, what it looks like. And they're really out in full force now, I could tell you that.
And the trauma bonding that they do when they target people to unite like that, the targeting is contingent largely on having a past life with that person already. So you already have a foundation established. And then the trauma bonding is that much stronger because you may not be aware of it, but you do have all these past experiences of depth with the person. So you don't know what's true or isn't true because your memories are being, it's like you're having double memory. You're feeling the past life experiences with the person and the genuineness of that. And that gets technologically hijacked in a trauma bonding form to be vampirized. So it really, really confuses people.
Yeah, so that's the feeling some people have sometimes when they meet whom they think they've known forever or in a former life or a previous life, past life, and maybe it's just a false memory or something, a screen memory.
Sometimes it is a false memory because I have heard that before from people who realize that they actually had programming just so that they would meet with another person and then they would be used as a team in certain super soldier kind of situations where two MyLabs would be bonded together, and the programmers would do anything to make sure that they got together because they wanted to use them as a duo because they were stronger together as a team. So some of what I wrote in the Love Bite in terms of why are they doing this? Why are they bonding some people together? But in some of the MILABs and the super soldiers and people who are in these secret projects, they may be bonded because their psi level or their psi ability is amplified when they're together because it's like a soul tantric union that they're able to catalyze these kinds of connections, I think also with alien help and alien technology to create a heightened psychic ability. Then they go and use them on operations like remote viewing or any number of things. So that was one reason why they put them together, or why, let's say, a reptilian was put together with a female MyLab and had a sexual encounter where the Kundalini was activated, and then right after the reptilian left, then the military would come and take them and then use them on military black ops. And this was basically a sequence, a particular standard operating procedure for some. So they're using these high-level occult tantric methods that the reptilians have taught and do with humans, and then they work in conjunction with military and their operations as well. So someone is always getting something out of it, of course, except for the operative who's being used as a slave. So,
or as a portal,
Yeah, right. And that's in the anomalous experiences. When you see the mass hypnosis that people watch an event or a worldwide event like the Olympics, or a concert with Illuminati singers and occult artists, that drain energy out of you, or sexual energy mainly. Actually, they love to feed off of that, and a lot of flyby saucers have been seen in stadiums, flying over stadiums as if they were.
Yeah. I remember there was there was a man that James Bartley knew in San Diego County who used to do, like, raves were really big in the 90s, where the kids would get together and they'd have music and they'd party and take ecstasy. But there was a young man who did these raves, and he said, he would see craft, not only see craft roaming around when these people would get together and do what they do, but he actually saw grays manifesting there during the raves, and they were, basically feeding on the energy. But I remember there was one thing that Barbara Barthik had told us years ago, and it must have been a report, when some people would see the globe ships, and certain globe ships would go over large areas where there was a catastrophe or war or some event to occur or after it occurred, that those globe ships were used to take up the souls that had died in these catastrophes, and they were basically taking the souls. And they were waiting for these catastrophes so they can basically harvest the souls in those traumatic events.
What would you say, both of you, or either one of you, to the people who say we are creating our own reality, and basically the ETs are just a reflection, a mirror image of ourselves, and we're creating them in our own reality? What would you say to that? Because I know to me it's 50-50. It's just we create, but to some people it's just their reflection of ourselves.
Well, I mean, I do believe that we do create, and we're dreaming our reality to a certain extent, but I think it's a co-creative dreaming that's occurring. But I think as we become more aware and more integrated with our eternal spirit in the eternal now, we have more control over what we're manifesting by being very mindful of what we're believing and what we're feeling and who we're interacting with. But I still think there's a level of uncertainty and entrapment here while we're in the body. And that there's certain things that just because of the laws of what we're living in here, basically we're in a war zone and we're in occupied territory. So when you go into a game that's run by someone else, we got to play by the rules of the game. Or if we've come in incarnation, sometimes there are people who have gone under regressions, for example, and they have found that there were certain soul agreements they had to make while they came in, and there was certain agreements for them to be in this family, and this would happen and that would happen, and then they had to abide by these agreements just to be here, which pulls us into a game of other rules and other deities and principalities which are in rule here. So there's a certain level of uncertainty and control that exists on the earth. Even different places on the earth, there's different principalities where if you're in one location, you may have much less freedom in your life than if you go somewhere else, and it could be the spiritual principality alone that's the reason for it. So that's a big topic, and I don't know if Lauda wants to share on that.
Yeah. We are creators. This is first and foremost. We are a reflection of the initial spark, mind made manifest. We create worlds. That's what we do. I think what's happening here in this hijacking reality, this is not the reality that we were supposed to be living. So in the dream, we began to co-create with them, and we were infected by the psychic virus. Some of these parasites, some of these ancient beasts of the anti-deep, they come with a mimicry parasitic mind that infects us psychically, like a psychic membrane takes over. And we can't tell the difference if it's us or them, because the fusion is so, it's undetectable almost. They're perfect mimics. I do, however, think that in this hijacking, we allowed it to occur. And in allowing it to occur, it could have been a moment of weakness. We gave up everything that we came in with, and that gave them the right to start swiping our minds. That gave them the right to literally take and hybridize our DNA and do everything that has been done. You could say that we created everything, because if you really want to get quantum about it, we did, and we have created the entire experiment ultimately, even in the co-creation, because we agreed to parts of this, obviously. Ultimately, what I think has to happen is that we have to take back our reality. We have to take back our dream and manifest our world according to our terms and conditions, and exile, obliterate, completely wipe out all of these entities and beings that have hijacked our power. So the more that we take what is ours back, the more that we can, give them nowhere to live. I mean, essentially create a place where they can't live in.
But wasn't it a deception to start with, to begin with, to agree?
Absolutely, yeah.
And like I see so many experiencers who say, well, I have a spiritual agreement. I made a contract with the entities that have been abducting me and hybridizing me and so forth. So I'm part of the experiment. I agree to it. And wasn't there a deception to begin with?
It's absolutely a deception. The basis of all of this is always an agreement of entrapment in some way. And usually they take something from you without you knowing it, and then they give you and present something for you to take to, quote, help you. So the whole thing is absolutely a deception, and there's no doubt about it. And the deceptions kept occurring because they were able to just swipe us when they wanted.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what happened in the very beginning, because I've heard this by other researchers. For example, there was an original creation where it wasn't the synthetic overlay matrix hologram like it is now, where it was meant to be more of a playground with people who had light bodies and might have had androgynous nature, and that at some point there was an infection and an invasion that occurred where the androgynous ones, the spirits, were literally split, and then the power of that was taken to empower the ones who were invading, and then it was like a type of entrapment and infection that was like it's a forced agreement of entrapment through war and through deception. So I think a lot of the scriptures try to put a lot of blame on, the origin in terms of the sin and the fall and everything. And I think what we're noticing now in clinical practice is obvious deception and entrapment that it seems like it's totally not fair. I mean, it would be like they have this long agreement that you have to sign, but in the fine print, they tell you all these other things, but they really don't let you know what it is, and they try to sell you what you think you're getting a good deal, but it's really a shitty deal, It's more like that.
Sort of like a life insurance agreement or something.
Well, they tell you can decorate the farm and everybody's happy with that. Basically this is what it is. Everybody knows it's a prison system. Everybody knows they're enslaved, but everybody seems to be just happy to decorate their, prison cell.
Yeah,
the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. The Stockholm syndrome. That's pretty much what mankind is all about.
But I think there's something underlying this, okay? I think ultimately we have to ask ourselves, what is it that human beings fear the most? And that answer has everything to do with why they allow themselves to be trapped to the extent that they have been. And what they fear the most is to be responsible and accountable for their own universe, to be accountable completely to every choice as a creator, because that means there are no crutches, no denials. You have to take your entire life fully and be in charge of every choice you make as a creator. And I think humanity is terrified of that. They're terrified of their own power, and only a few are willing to really stand in that, because that actually means that you are confronting everything on the basis of your sovereignty, your authority, and the power that brings. But you need to be sure about what that is before you do it. And most are afraid. So they want the shackles. They want the golden handcuffs.
Well, a lot of times in the quantum healing modality where we go to the origin of the trauma, and sometimes, let's say someone prayed and asked for help. Anybody help me? So one of these hyperdimensional beings said, sure, I'll help you. And I'll be your guide. I'll be your protector. And then that being links into them and acts like their guide or their childhood friend, and it's really, you know, maybe a reptilian or a Draco or another being that links in and vampirizes their energy or directs their life in such a way that it actually pulls them away from the wisdom of their spirit, and instead they're dependent on this particular guide. So that actually has happened quite a bit in sessions where, let's say if I take them back or I take them through a guided session and we're looking for origin cause, a lot of these beings will masquerade as, oh, well, they're their protector, they're their guide, and they're really just a parasite.
Right, right, and those guides have all the shapes and forms that we can imagine that pleases their target. What about angels, archangels, ascended masters? Are they just another species of fallen angels? Because there's been a lot of deception with the gifts that were given by so-called angels or archangels.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, because I still believe that there's good ones and there's ones that are using deception to carry out whatever agenda they have. And there have been, I mean, even in my own life, I've had angelic intervention to help me, and it was very clear, and it was, you know, profound, and I felt like it was good. And I know that Lauda has also had supernatural intervention of a definite several times where, you know, warrior angels came to intercede. So I think there are good ones that do intercede and help certain people, and there are good and bad.
I also think that some will do good, okay, to make themselves appear like they're benevolent. But, you know, so I think it's not as clear cut. Some, yes, I agree. I mean, I've had many experiences. I also think a lot of these experiences can be us constantly from our future selves and our true being coming in and doing a lot of these miracles that happen. So, you know, the question about truly, well, the word angel never existed, by the way, either. That's something that's relatively a new term. In history, those that had wings were typically the serpentine, you know, reptilian
Dracs, yeah.
Those are the ones that had wings. And it's depicted in Sumeria, it's depicted in ancient Egypt, it's depicted all over ancient civilization. Nobody else had wings. So angelic, the word angelic is a relatively new term it just didn't exist. In the Bible, the quote angels that are there, they didn't have wings. They looked like humans. So they shapeshifted into humans and they would just come to you as a human form. I think that this is an inverted reality. So much of the fallen forces operate here for the most part, I think. And then you do have some that penetrate the veils and operate on behalf of what is a benevolent evolution.
And penetrate the veil. That's the right expression. What do you think there is really hiding behind the veil? That on the other side of the veil. What according to you?
Yeah. What is the veil?
Yeah.
Yeah, the veil alone. I mean, even in the Gnostic scriptures, they talk about the veil. I think that's above the Ogdode, and there's actually a veil that covers the upper from the lower, and the eternal realms versus the realms of the demiurge, which we're in, which is the false matrix reality. So it's really getting through. And a lot of times I think our prayers can't be heard because there's literally a veil, and that it's hard to be heard by the higher unless you have a deeper connection. And so there is an upper and a lower, and there is a veil. And so even, I think, good ones coming through the veil, they may come through at a risk, because we are in territory here that is under the demiurgic.
They do come through as a risk. And I'm one of those, because I have memory of coming in through the back door. And it was like, it was a dangerous operation to even get in. So
yeah,
those of my experience that have been benevolent have all stated the same thing, that they had to be very cautious because this was one of the most dangerous territories, and the fact that they managed to get through, they were being hunted. Like,
yes,
technology here and the way that the forces operate, they know exactly when there's an intruder.
yeah.
And the hunting begins, right? So my experiences with those, including Delirian, right, that you remember, Evie, I tell it.
Yes. You might want to talk about the one who warned you, and I don't know if you want to talk about that, but the Lyrians are actually key in a lot of people's experiences who were the originals who were here when the invasion took place to split us, you know, and the goddesses.
I didn't know about the Lyrians at that point when I met him, because when he introduced himself, that's when I learned about the Lyrians, because he said he was a Lyrian. And he could only meet me for a brief moment in time. He could only be here for so long, because if he stayed too long, he would probably be killed. So he was freaking out. Like, he gave me he was the one that told me a lot about what is really going on in terms of the artificial nature of everything. In the takeover, he was the one also that said that they hunt those that penetrate the veil and that are here, and they'll kill them if they can. So he told me, he said many of theirs don't make it. There's a limited window that they can come in and do what they need to do, which he was very frustrated, because I was so freaked out at the time. I was having so many experiences that I didn't want to really even meet him, because I knew he was an alien. It was very apparent. He had orange skin. You know, his hair was
Oranges,
yeah, he had
black and matted, and
it was black and thick and weird, and his ears were pointed. Trying to look like he was normal, wearing like this trench coat and a hat, like, and it was all so apparent. I thought, you know what, I just can't handle this anymore. So the poor Lyrian is following me around just so that he could sit me down for, you know, a talk to tell me what he came to tell me, because he's like, you know, we came in for you, like, can you just give us? And I was no, and then I finally did give him, and then of course what he told me was just, in many ways, confirmation of things that are very terrifying.
So did he communicate with you telepathically, or?
No, he met me. I mean, they're telepathic, but they also speak. So I said, you want to meet me? Because he was following me around, and it was finally, I had to go, okay, what? And he's like, I need to sit down with you. I said, fine, you want to talk to me? We talk in a cafe. So we were in a cafe in a public place, and he was talking to me like word for word, because they learn, you know, whatever language they want to. Most of all of these beings have technology where they download all the languages. Not a big deal for them. But yeah, they're mostly, and they can be telepathic, but they also know what you're going through at the time. So when they make any kind of conversation, or when they make contact with you, they know what your state is. They know if you're hyper sensitive, or if you have PTSD. They know all of these things. So he was very he was trying to be as gentle as possible, considering what I was experiencing at the time. And so I sat down with him, and then I told him, I go, you make a lousy human. You look alien, like you have orange skin. And that's how I learned about the Lyrians, and the whole they are helping us. They are trying to come in, but many of them are dying because they're hunted down.